Okay, looks like the recording has started. Welcome everybody. I now call to order this meeting of the Anchorage Assembly Rules Committee. It is Thursday, December 9, 2021, and we are noticed from 1 to 3 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Miss Allard.
Here.
Mr. Dunbar.
Here.
Miss Kennedy.
Here.
Mr. Perez-Verdia.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Miss Quinn Davidson.
Here.
Mr. Rivera. Mr. Weddleton. Miss Salatel.
Here.
Miss LaFrance.
Here.
Mr. Constant. I think he may be excused. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And yes, Mr. Constant is excused. He is traveling. Okay, so the agenda is available online.
Would you like me to share it, Madam Chair?
Sure, thank you, Barbara. That's right, we can do first names in the Rules Committee. So the agenda is available online. If you go to the Assembly page and click at the top on committees and scroll down until you get to the Rules Committee, you can pull up the agenda. Second here. Thank you for putting that up, Barbara. So it's a fairly standard agenda under new business, report from the chair, legislative liaison, municipal clerk, followed by assembly member discussion on pending business, an update from committees, an upcoming business, and then an update on the facilitated collaborative process between the administration and legislative drafting group. I want to note too, at Tuesday's meeting, Chris Constant asked that we add a structured discussion of communication methodology for the facilitated process to the agenda specifically. And so as we move through the agenda, I'd like to hear from members how you would like to address that discussion. And then we'll get an update from the reapportionment committee and then any other items. We don't have any unfinished business, and we will leave time for audience participation. Anybody have anything they want to add to the agenda or any comments? Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and move on. And I'll just mention too that the agenda, which I said is available online, muni.org, to get to the Assembly's page. So I just have a couple things today, and I want to highlight the calendar because it's particularly full. Tomorrow we have a 9 a.m. meeting with the joint School Board Assembly quarterly meeting, and it will be at the ASD Education Center. And this is earlier than usual because the ASD Legislative Priorities Luncheon will be at noon at King Tech High School. Also tomorrow we have a work session on AO 2021-117 at 2 p.m. on Teams. And this AO seeks to codify practices and clarify differences with Robert's rules to make meetings more efficient. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow, though it may come up later here as well since it overlaps with some of the process issues we've been talking about. I'll just say as a co-sponsor of that with Cameron and Chris, it's my intention for that to be a really boring ordinance. And then we have a special meeting tomorrow to take up the vetoes that will follow the work session. It will be at 4 p.m. in room 155 at City Hall. And then a special meeting on Tuesday, December 14th at 6 p.m. to take up the items we didn't get to at Tuesday's regular meeting. The mayor's legislative luncheon is on Wednesday, and then Thursday, the 16th, there are 3 committee meetings: CEDC, Enterprise Utility, Budget and Finance, and then Friday is free of work sessions right now with a ribbon cutting event at the Assembly Suite 150. I believe that's at noon, but I think Barbara will speak to that item. Is that at noon, Barbara?
I believe that is correct, Madam Chair. We'll be sure to get a updated notice reminder out to everyone for that.
Great, thank you.
Suzanne, we just received that email today, and it's 12 to 1:30. That I just put it in my personal
Thanks.
calendar. So, yeah.
Yep, I see it on there now too. Thank you, Austin. Okay, and then we have a regular meeting on the 21st, and I know there was some initial hope that we would be able to reschedule that one because we do have several members traveling. And then hopefully in what will be our last meeting of the year, it's scheduled for December 30th, which is somewhat unusual, but because Jack Gadamus is leaving, it's an opportunity to get that annual validation report. So the work session will be 11 to 12 on the 30th, which again, I recognize is unusual. It's a goal to get through as much as we can before the end of the year too with our regular agenda business. I'm hoping we won't have to, have any special meetings on the 23rd or the 31st or anything like that. That's kind of a joke, so. Okay. Just a couple other notes here. At the last meeting, we talked about process concerning public testimony, and there's a lot of interest from members to continue that conversation. The Roberts Rules AO won't necessarily address some of those issues that were raised. Some of them may be addressed through policy and procedure instead of code, and Cameron is engaged, with some of that, and so we may come back to this at a later meeting or later in this meeting. Crystal?
Thanks, Suzanne. I just wanted to kind of go back a little bit. You mentioned at the regular meeting on the 21st, there's a possibility that will be changed. Can you?
No.
There is. Okay.
There was initial hope. Thanks, Crystal. Appreciate you bringing that up. There was initial hope it would be changed because a number of, I think 3 or 4 members are traveling and out of town at that time for the holidays, and it is close to Christmas. At this point, my hope is that we just don't have any other special meetings needed after the 21st because people are traveling. But, it just depends, of course, on what happens.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that clarifies. Thanks.
Thanks, Crystal. And I just wanted to mention too, initial audience participation, and given that oftentimes folks come and there's an expectation that there will be an abundance of time for participation early on in the meeting, that it's my intent to stress that per code, audience participation is time permitting, and to mention that in my report and also before initial audience participation starts. I do want to note that I thank Felix for pointing this out, that the last person who speaks must start by 6 p.m. And in my notes, I had an earlier section of code reference, that section 2.30.035, which used to state that the last person needed to finish by 6 p.m. So just wanted to make that clear, that the last person just needs to start speaking by 6 p.m. And then finally, some of you have raised questions about where to direct members of the public to find notices for various meetings. And Barbara and Claire have been responding to some of those inquiries, and Claire will speak a little bit more about that in her report. So now we'll go ahead and go to you. Barbara, are you next? Let me pull up the agenda here real quick, or is that Claire? Claire, you're next. Legislative Liaison Report.
All right. Cameron, I saw your hand up. Did you have something before I go?
Yeah, sorry, it takes 2 or 3 minutes for it to actually happen. Thank you. I just wanted to go back real quick to your comments, Suzanne, about initial audience participation. And I know that you emphasize this each time, but it's been unclear as to whether the people who are choosing to participate in that initial audience participation are actually doing it because they're not able to wait. And in most cases, as I've seen, people who are coming up and doing that initial audience for participation are staying throughout the entire meeting. And so that's something that I guess I just wanted to point out, is that the intention there was to create a small window of time for people who have children or who have reasons that they're really not able to wait or to talk about a particular issue in the meeting. And so anyway, I just want to point that out, that it seems to be being used by folks who are using it, but then also staying throughout the meeting. So I'm not sure whether there's anything we can do about that. That's something we can take up in some of our discussions in the next year. So, thanks.
Thanks, Cameron. And Felix and then Austin want to speak to the point you raised. So Felix?
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. So I appreciate Cameron bringing that point up. For me, the way that I've always seen that and the way that I scripted it when I was chair was that the initial audience participation, there should be a priority, and that priority should be folks who have childcare issues, who have transportation issues, folks who take public transit and they can't stay until midnight because they won't have a bus to go home, and folks who have other meetings and they can only stay until a certain time, so they testify there and then they're out. We've never really figured out a mechanism to actually institute that. It's always been all right, guys, please prioritize yourselves. And I don't know if that's ever really worked. So I think that's a good point. And if there's a way to institute it, I think that would be interesting to explore.
Thanks, Felix. Austin?
Thanks, Suzanne. I think I'm just piggybacking on what the others have said, and I thought it would be useful for me to weigh in since I worked with Barbara and Dean and others primarily to bring forward the ordinance that actually changed the agenda to include initial audience participation. And of course, I think we all supported it in the end, but just to give a little background, that was certainly the intent. That's why we did it, was to allow for folks to, sort of a special opportunity for folks to participate who couldn't otherwise. So I think we should be thinking about ways to really welcome those folks and not just use it as a chance for folks who are going to be there the whole time. So I kind of agree with Felix and Cameron, don't know what the solution is, but I would like to find one. Thanks.
Thank you, Austin. Next is Crystal and then Pete. Crystal?
Thanks, Suzanne. I agree with Austin that I don't know what the solution is, but we need to work on finding some answers, particularly because not only have we used that time to try to allow people who need to leave for whatever reason, they work at 2 a.m. or whatever, we have also made this an opportunity for people to be heard on non-agenda items. So it seems to me like we have a couple of different kinds of instruction there that allows people should be allowing some flexibility. But my bigger concern in it is the timing, because there are times when we don't get past the first couple of things on the agenda, and then we've spent 35, 40, 45 minutes, and then we do end up leaving 15 or 20 minutes of public testimony. And I think when we were originally talking about how this agenda schedule would play out, we figured we'd be done with reports, by maybe the first 15 minutes, and that just has never really happened. So I think the other thing we have to deal with is the fact that sometimes we are absolutely limiting the public just because we can't, you know, and they've said this, you're cutting into our time. And so there is a sense from the public that they should have a certain amount of time for a certain number of people to be heard. So anyway, I would hope that we would wrestle with that as well to figure out how we really do that timing thing without having to say, well, I move to waive, you know, the rules of the agenda. But anyway, if we can kind of have a conversation about how we make that work for the public as well, I'd appreciate that. Thanks.
Thanks, Crystal. And if I can just follow up and ask about when you say conversation, do you mean just more in the rules committee or a special meeting?
Well, you have, there's going to be a conversation about more, what you were talking about. And I don't actually, sorry, I don't really know exactly which kind of document you were talking about having a conversation about, but it did have to do with more of our processes in the chambers and with our agenda. So that might be something to talk about at that point, because I know, like you said, you're trying to figure out how we stick to that 6 o'clock time frame, but to a certain extent, we haven't been able to stick with the other parts of our agenda either. So anyway, I don't really care when we have a conversation about it. I just think it should be part of what we're talking about if we're trying to streamline our regular assembly meeting processes. Thanks.
Thanks, Crystal. And I just, want to make sure that I have a clear idea of everybody's expectations and, when we say conversation, and I've said that before, what people want to have happen. So thanks. Pete?
Thanks, Suzanne. And I just have to tell you, I was recently contacted by a person who's been attending assembly meetings for many, many, many years. And they said that they believe that the way we have it set up now, we have the audience participation early in the meeting, has caused the meetings to be much more disruptive than they've ever seen before. And they recommended that we go back to the old way. And I think maybe the genie's out of the box there. I don't know if we can do that or not. But there is that perception out there that because we have changed the format, that is, the meetings have become more disruptive. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. And
Madam Chair.
Oh, Mr. Dunbar?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I'm driving, so I can't chat. Could you please add me to the queue?
Sure, you're next. Yep, go ahead, Forrest.
Okay, great. Great, thank you. I agree with what Mr. Peterson just stated. I think it is clearly being abused. I think it is setting a tone for the meeting that's discouraging participation from a lot of other citizens. And I think that it was a mistake, frankly. We shouldn't have passed that ordinance. But, I did vote for that ordinance because I recognize the issue, particularly the issue with people who that was the only time they could come to speak to public hearing items, and then they otherwise weren't able to be there. So I think one of the ways that we might be able to prevent abuse or lessen abuse would be to require initial audience participation be towards a public hearing item. That is, you have to be speaking towards a public hearing item. And then if people stray from that, then they're subject to the same kind of rules as people who must speak to public hearing items. But also, then obviously they don't speak to public hearing items later in the evening. And you might say, well, what about people who don't want to speak to public hearing items? We have a variety of other ways to reach out to the assembly. Mr. Weddleton brings them up a lot. We have, in addition to community councils, and we also have obviously our phone numbers posted. We have email, and we have appearance requests. And that's how it used to be done, So we had final audience participation. Very seldom when people hang out till then. But when people had a really pressing issue that wasn't a public hearing item, they would put in an appearance request. And that was what that system was for. The initial audience participation has only been around for a year and a half. The assembly functioned, I think, reasonably well for the decades before that. And so my first suggested reform would be, unless we're going to get rid of the system entirely, would be to limit it to public hearing items. And then they'd be subject to the same rules as those who testified to public hearing items. Thank you.
Thanks, Forrest. We'll go to Jamie next and then John. Jamie?
Sorry, I had to find that. Yeah, I kind of there has been a little bit of change. I was not on the assembly really prior to when the rules were changed. I know I was there when the rule changed, but I didn't get a lot of the other experience except when I would come down and watch the assembly meetings. I think one of the things that Mr. Dunbar hit on that I think is reasonable is that if they come in front of us as a well, that's a hard one. Yeah, to talk on the item, but I'm concerned of there are people who maybe don't email a lot or people who don't call us, and it's not giving the community the opportunity to publicly come in front of the assembly and address their elected officials on, matters that aren't necessarily on the agenda. I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't know what I know what our intent is to calm the chambers down, but the perception might come across completely different. And then as far as like other people not wanting to come down because certain other people are there, I just can't wrap my head around it. This is the reality. Reality is if you want to come in front of the assembly, everybody is welcome to do it. If there's people that have felt intimidated by it or uncomfortable with it, that's a you problem. That's not an us problem. They have to work that out with either their therapist, I'm not trying to be funny, or some other way, but that is the public process. So I would recommend that we really carefully think about cutting off the public testimony of where they can just come in front of us and say, you know what, Miss Allard, I don't like you, or this is what you're doing and I don't appreciate it. I actually enjoy being able to hear from the community in those ways. That's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Jamie. John?
Thanks. I really liked the idea of having that early participation and just thinking back to so many years dragging my kids to those meetings. And I think, man, that would have been an incredible thing. It was totally supported doing it. And it is a freaking disaster. It's not doing what it was supposed to do. It is creating a wild start of every meeting that is messing us up throughout. And I think it looks awful for us when we don't let every single person who's there at that moment to talk, because that's what they came for. They want to talk to us, but it's a work meeting and we just have to get our work done. And we're having meetings till midnight, second meetings, which is not good for us, for the staff, and it is not good for the public. Now people came Tuesday to speak on the elections. They have to wait. They waited all night. Now they wait. This is not fair to anyone. And we need to make some kind of change, and we will catch grief for it. But right now it's just frustrating people, and it's either guaranteed 30 minutes period, and we just make that work, or 15 minutes. Say early participation, you can come, but you only get 2 minutes. If you want the full 3, wait till the normal time. Something like that. But it is really, unfortunately, not working, because I had really hoped it would help people dragging their kids to those meetings. But now we have the phone testimony, and that's an alternative. So there's no happy way out of this, but it is frustrating that it's just not working. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Forrest?
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing to that. The idea that people to talk to their therapist or whatever it is if they don't feel comfortable in that room. I think that, I know that wasn't meant to be funny, but the idea that people would be intimidated in that room, that only sort of makes sense if we were strictly enforcing the rules of the chamber. If every time somebody yelled or clapped or jeered, they were immediately kicked out of that room, and it was a lot similar to it was for the first 4.5 years I was on the assembly, then I agree with that. But I don't think any of us think that's practical, to arrest or remove every single person that breaks the chamber rules. And because we can't maintain any kind of semblance of order in the chamber, and people are flagrantly abusing the rules and yelling and screaming and confronting people, then it doesn't surprise me at all that people don't feel comfortable coming down to be in that room. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Forrest. Austin and then Jamie.
Wondering if I should take myself out of the queue, because really I just wanted to thank John for those comments. I think he's right. Being the person that sort of worked on this, it was like, oh, there's people with young kids and there are folks who work at night and they can't come, and that's why we're doing this. And we built in the fact that it was flexible and it ended at 6. And, now we're seeing folks who stay for the whole meeting who believe they're entitled to more time past 6. And that is just really not the intent at all. So I don't know what to do, but I appreciate John's comments and, being the person who I think brought that ordinance, would be willing to change it. Thanks.
Thanks, Austin. Jamie?
Yeah, after what Forrest and John both said, and no, thank you, Forrest. I wasn't trying to be flippant about the whole, maybe they need to talk to someone. I really wasn't. Yeah, I think I'm a little bit swayed that it's more disruptive. It was really disruptive the other night. It didn't need to be. And you're right, that the testimony from what John had said was supposed to be there for folks who did have children and that or had to work maybe 7 o'clock at night and have those shifts. So the intent was a great intent, and I think that it's been abused. So yeah, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Jamie. I'll just put myself in the queue to thank everybody for their comments, and I really appreciate what you've all said, and that, it's a business meeting and that we have work to get through, and there is audience participation at the end, but oftentimes we haven't been getting to the end of our meetings and don't get to that. So I can see how that might cause more people to come to the beginning too, which might make it even a little more difficult to get to the business. So thank you all for your comments. And I would just say that I think that most of us too are united in wanting to create a climate of respect where people feel comfortable and do have that, have a positive experience coming to speak with the Assembly as well. Okay, so thank you, and we will now go to Claire.
All right, thanks everyone. First off, I just want to thank all of you. I'm really enjoying working with you and getting to know you and helping the Assembly meet your goals. So I'm just loving this job and really grateful for all of you for your support. Some of my recent accomplishments, I've done a lot with the reapportionment committee, which you've all seen, issuing that fact sheet, which I hope to do more of those fact sheets. So especially if you're a committee chair or working on a big project and want to figure out ways to make your work more publicly accessible, I'd love to work with you to do fact sheets or other information. So hopefully that's something we can do more of. I've also been meeting with each of you and enjoying getting to know what you're really passionate about and surveying your communications methods. And so hopefully over the next year, I can help you all with your individual communications and your aids to streamline that or help you with that. I've mentioned I think it'd be really cool to have a master calendar throughout the year of different big events and projects and get you all in front of groups like the Chamber and Rotaries. If you have a big project you're working on and help make sure we've got Assembly members out in the community, different parts of the community, different geographical areas throughout the year. So people are getting that information. I am also working on assembling a document with your 2021 accomplishments and the 2022 priorities. I've gotten to talk to about half of you so far and gotten really great feedback. So I'm excited to release that. I'm thinking that I would have a draft done by the end of this month, and then perhaps the January Rules Committee, we could go through that as a group and finalize it. And then if you think of I'm sure once I send it out, it'll prompt you to think of more things, so we can keep adding to that for the priorities and accomplishments. Administration of the suites. We got Wi-Fi for Suite 150, which is really nice. It's working very well. So hopefully that will help you when you bring in your personal devices to the office. And then I'm helping the clerk's office with providing support for the joint meetings with the native village of Eklutna. So I'm excited to work in between now and the next meeting to help out with those. As you know, we met with the Alaska Municipal League yesterday. It was a really nice informal meeting with Nils. He wanted to let us know about some things they have coming up. I'm going to need help with this one, Western Interstate Council. Is that what it's called, Suzanne? It's county
Yeah.
commissioners from across the western states. They're having their conference in Anchorage, May 16th through 18th. They're expecting about 400 people to come. And apparently when they hold it in Alaska, it's one of the most popular locations. So a lot of them will bring families and go on side trips. So hopefully we can help with that event and help promote our local tourism and businesses that need a boost. And so I think they will be asking us to help with that and perhaps host some events. And then the Municipal League has their winter conference in February, I believe, and it'd be great if we could get some assembly members to go to that. So I'll be working more with the Municipal League to get their schedule and get that out to you in advance so you can decide if you want to attend their events. They also have several committees that may be of interest to you, and they're hoping to get some assembly representation on those. So I'll be learning more about them and then reaching out to individuals to see if it's something you'd be interested in, or you can just get a hold of them or me. One of them is going to be on infrastructure, and I think that one they're really hoping that communities don't just buckle down and do individual things, but that we all work together as a state on all the infrastructure money coming in. And then next up, I will be starting a monthly e-newsletter. We contracted with Northwest Strategies last year and they got one out, but I'm hoping to make them kind of short and sweet and get them out more often with upcoming things so people know what will be on future assembly meetings and deep dives on some of the more complicated things like budgets and reapportionment. I'm also working on another round of edits to the website. It came up in the past couple weeks that it is kind of hard to find things on the calendar. Some things are on the calendar, some things are on the meeting notices page. So I'm hoping to streamline that just to make it really easy for people to find what they're looking for quickly and not have any hidden sections of our website. And then I think my final thing is that we're having the ribbon cutting on the 17th, and I really hope you all can make it. I think it'll be a nice chance after you've had so many meetings and so much stress over the past couple months to just have some fun together and celebrate the new suites. And one last thing is the IT training. I hope you all take it by the end of December. I know it's kind of a pain to have one more thing added, but it really is about 20-30 minutes, and it'll teach you a lot of great things to protect your work computer so that you're not the one that brought down the Muni to their knees. But also you can use it on your personal devices and just be more secure with your technology all around. So that's what I have. And then it looks like there's a couple questions.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, that would be an unfortunate fame to claim. We've got Cameron and then Felix.
No, I'm good. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Cameron. Felix?
Thanks, Suzanne. So I was wondering, Claire, if you've put any thought, especially with the legislative session coming up, into what it might look like to help coordinate assembly members who are interested in going to Juneau and quote unquote lobbying our legislators and sort of doing that work. I know we tend to do it in a very uncoordinated fashion, but would be interested to see if there might be some opportunity or avenue, or if it makes sense to do some type of coordinated work, and if that might be something you're interested in.
Oh, I would love to help out with that. I'll take my direction from you all because I don't quite know the Assembly's role in that and how it might coordinate with the mayor's work or be separate. But I'm a capital projects gal, so I love to get money for projects. And I've heard, with the infrastructure bill and the state budget recovering a little bit, that there will be more money this year. So I think it should be all hands on deck on that. So Felix, perhaps we can talk about that when we meet more and plan it out. And I'd love to help coordinate that.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Felix. And thank you, Claire, for all your work. Also wanted to mention to everyone that we had the second meeting with the native village of Eklutna yesterday, and Claire and Travis handled all the setup stuff for that for the clerk side and the phones, and just thank you for taking care of all that. Barbara.
Thank you. I guess before I start, I'll say the clerk's office is thrilled to have Claire on board and is glad that she's loving her job. It gives us some space to do our job. So, you know, I usually have 3 things for you, and I'm going to try to stick to that. The first one is easy. As most of you know, when the agendas go out, assembly members can ask questions, and they can send those questions to the clerk's office, and the clerk directs them to the administration, or if they're related to something that the clerk's office done, we'll respond to those and then provide that to everyone. Well, we have started something new, and that's that our business license official, Mandy Honest, is going to contact you and ask you if you have any questions about marijuana or liquor licenses that are on the agenda. And if you do have any questions about those items, please get back to Mandy. The idea is that it will save staff dollars if Mandy doesn't have to listen in on the assembly meetings, because you never know when those items are going to come up, if they're on the consent agenda or if they're in the 15. So that's why she'll be providing those emails ahead of time. So if you do have any questions, please respond to Mandy and let her know. And she and Kiana, who is the liquor license person, will get back to you. So the second thing that I wanted to talk to you about today is agendas and special meeting and scheduling meetings has really been a focus of our work with the number of meetings that the assembly is holding. I counted 9 meetings this week. I hope that was a mistake, but that's what I came up with. You know, we make sure that the meetings are timely noticed and accurate. After all of the meetings, we, prepare all of the documents. We have to amend them and then get them signed and stamped and filed. We make them available to members, the public, and the administration. I just offhand counted 8 documents that were amended at your last meeting alone. And that just makes it a little bit more work for us to do that and make sure that those are done accurately to reflect the will of the body. So we have a special meeting next Tuesday, and this is helpful for the clerk's office. It allows us to finish this week's meeting, notice the agenda for your special meeting this week, and then do the same for next Tuesday. It's just a little bit more complicated when we have continued meetings. And Suzanne, I just wanted to ask you, can I talk about our proposed schedule for meetings in 2022?
Sure, Barbara.
So with Suzanne's permission, the clerk's office reserved the assembly chambers every Tuesday night in 2022. So that means that we don't have some of that juggling that we've done in the past, like going to the Learning Commons or booting out one of the land use boards. So if, in fact, you don't finish your work and you want to do what you did this Tuesday and have a special meeting the next Tuesday, or if you want to continue a meeting, you can do that, and we know that the room is available. So anyway, we just wanted to let you know that we've made that little change for 2022. Just what you wanted to know, that you're going to meet every week instead of twice a month. So the third thing that I wanted to talk to you about is something that Claire also mentioned. We have a web editing team in the clerk's office, and Claire is part of that team. They're working very hard to keep the Assembly and Clerk's Office websites up to date. There is so much information, and I think that's one of the things that causes some struggles for the public. Several of us and Claire are meeting next week to discuss ramping up social media. And the purpose of that is to direct the public to specific pages on the website. So for example, on social media, we'll do a big blurb with the regular meeting agenda. And then if people get that social media blast, then they can click on the link in the social media and they're going to go right to that regular meeting agenda instead of going to the website. We're trying to direct them to the page. So for example, another example, we could say, let's say we've got this rules committee meeting and we can get you right to this rules committee agenda or the documents or something like that. So we're trying to make it easier for the public who are kind of struggling, you know, and we admit the agenda, the handouts, and the notice are all on a little bit different pages. And we've got some ideas how to streamline that. So those are the three things that I wanted to give you an update on. And of course, you know, I just can't stick to three. So I'm going to tell you a fourth. We're having a cookie exchange in the clerk's office on December 17th in the morning. So we'll bring samples of all of our cookies to your ribbon cutting ceremony. And that's it from me.
Thank you so much, Barbara, and thank you for all that you and your team do. It is an incredible amount of work and just so important now that I've had some experience as chair, just and to see in great detail just what goes into making sure that our meetings are properly noticed and have agendas and run smoothly. It's a lot. So thank you so much for doing that. Just a couple more notes. In the budget for the Assembly, there is a new aide position, and just wanted to let everyone know that that is in the early stages of getting developed, or the position description getting done and submitted before it can, and approved before it can be posted. So we don't have a timeline yet on that, except that it's being worked. And then I just wanted to note also, just with the late on the table process or procedure, and Austin, you had mentioned this on Tuesday, and the additional work on the back end that can be for the clerk's office when we bring things forward on the floor, and sometimes it's unavoidable, but to be as judicious as we can with when we bring things forward, and try to get as much done before we get to those regular meetings, because when we don't, it does make more work for the clerk's office. And then finally, I'll just note that on the Tuesdays, thank you, Barbara, for reserving those. And just to quote Forrest, it's a ceiling, not a goal. Doesn't mean we need to meet every Tuesday. Austin.
Thanks, Suzanne. Barbara's point sort of got me thinking about scheduling. And, you know, this week, I think many of us have other jobs, and this is supposed to be a part-time job, even though we all know it's really not. But for instance, today I had an existing meeting, so I had to miss the House List Lived Experience work session. And my practice has been to always listen to them afterwards. So it might take me a while to catch up, but I listen to them. But that means I'm doing that late at night after my other jobs. And I guess this all kind of leads to a question, which is, how, Suzanne, do you decide whether and when to set work sessions? Because the timing feels sometimes, you know, sometimes we're Monday, sometimes we're Thursday, sometimes and the quantity. Like, does anyone ever say, I want to bring this forward? And we say, you know what? We already have 7 meetings this week. We don't have space on our calendar. It's going to have to be 2 weeks from now. And I'm just wondering if we could all talk about, like, what is our capacity? And not everything is urgent, even when people sometimes think it is. So can you just walk me through that? And maybe we can, as a group, like, have a goal of days that we meet and what time period and how much time, so that we don't get in a position where a lot of members can't attend.
Thanks, Austin. Yeah, I appreciate that. I remember first getting on the body and having like work sessions on Fridays only and maybe every other Friday. And over time, it's gotten to be more work sessions and more committee meetings and more business. So the first thing with scheduling a work session is I consult with the clerk's office just on the calendar, because sometimes they're holding dates or know that something's coming. And so that's the first thing is to look at the availability. And sometimes when we're expecting a work session to need to be scheduled for something of high interest, it may end up, bumping stuff to Thursday or now even Monday. With the Houseless Lived Experience Advisory Board, that one, at the request of the administration, was rescheduled because some of the appointees couldn't make it. And I know that members would, really wanted to have that before our last regular meeting, and it just didn't work out. Sometimes the clerk's office, as you've seen, has polled members about a work session, and if it's just like 1 or 2 people, then I don't, we don't need to do that, or even if there's time for individuals to go and get the information they need from the administration. So there isn't, I'd say, a set, sorry, just seeing if that's someone who wants in the queue, procedure, except to work closely with the clerk's office and the administration. That's why some of them also have been moved, is some folks in the administration have been out, and we need them in those work sessions and do our best to try to find something that works for everybody. But I would love to hear suggestions from people on how to do that better. And Austin, did you have anything else? I'm not sure if you had a few questions in there, and did I answer them or address them?
Yeah, I guess specific questions would be, can we maybe get a list of the times and dates? It used to be we start with Friday morning, then we do Friday afternoon, then we do Thursday, but it feels like maybe we're still following that. I'm not sure. So that would be one specific ask. And then I think the other specific ask is, can we agree to put a limit on how many hours we're in meetings unless it's absolutely urgent? Because I do think a lot of things are scheduled that are not urgent, but it keeps us at this pace that is frankly unsustainable for a lot of us with other jobs.
Okay. And then just back to your first one about the specific work session days. I mean, we start with Friday, and because I remember when we did do that ranking, and maybe Barbara wants to chime in, and I think Thursday was the second choice, and then nothing on Tuesday, even though there have been requests for work sessions on Tuesday. I've said no to those because Tuesday just gets too crazy with our meeting. But Barbara, do you want to just speak to the prioritization of days for the work session? Because my recollection is Friday, Thursday, and then Monday.
Yes, Suzanne and Austin, it's interesting because you look at the practices that we have, and our practice was, as Austin said, Friday afternoon, then Friday morning, and that was so that you could save money on lunch. And obviously lunch is no longer an issue. So since you're meeting virtually, I think that we could do, possibly more meetings on Fridays, your quarterly meetings with like this week where you've got the school board meeting are anomalies. And one of the things that we try to do with the quarterly school board meeting is not have it on the Friday before a regular meeting, because I think that's just too hard on all of us. And so, yes, I think we could do better. We could, if the body prefers, starting Friday mornings at 9 or 9:30, we could do that, and we could just go through the whole day. And then Thursdays, and then if you want to say that's enough, then we're okay with that. I think the problem that you have, and then this is a decision for the body, if someone says, yeah, but this item is up for a vote on Tuesday, then you say, well, then we postpone it or continue it. But that's a decision for you to make.
Thanks, Barbara. That's helpful. And I see Austin put a note in the chat about, I'm pretty certain most recently the body preferred Friday morning first and afternoon. I remember Felix and I trying to figure that out. My recollection was the opposite, but it's good to have this conversation. Oh, and then Felix says he thinks that was something folks wanted for the summer. They wanted their Friday afternoons off to be outside. So definitely up for discussion. I'll go ahead and go through the queue here. We've got Cameron, then Jamie, then Meg. Cameron? Can't hear you, Cameron. Looks like Cameron's stuck on mute. Okay, can we, Barbara, do we have a way to unmute him? I know we've had this problem in the past.
Unmuted.
Does it work now,
Can you hear me
Cameron?
now?
Yep.
Okay, great. It still says I'm muted, but on my end, but if you can hear me, that's the most important thing. First of all, just wanted to second some of the things that Austin had said, and I think that's very true that being as conscious as we can of everyone's capacity. I did want to add one additional piece, and I'd mentioned this to you, Suzanne. I've been noticing that at meetings, you're saying so-and-so is excused, and then others are not excused. And so that's rather, seems newer to me. I feel like in my first year on the assembly and first year or two, that wasn't happening as much, but I didn't know what that process was, and if there was an expectation to call you or to email you to let you know that we're not able to attend a meeting in order to be excused, or what that really even means to be excused. So maybe you could just speak to that a bit, and we could have some clarity for all of us about what that is and what that process is. Thank you.
Thanks, Cameron. I thought you might ask about that, but I had not finished fully looking into it. So I know in code it states concerning like absences for regular meetings, members need to notify the chair. And, if you talk to Dick Traney, he says back in the day, you can only be excused if you actually had a note from your doctor. But we don't, we have, I think, some flexibility too for people to call in and recognize that people work, people have travel schedules, and obviously with COVID. So I think really, and Barbara, you may need to jump in here, or other members who've been on the body longer. I don't know as far as, Felix, I think, is in the queue on this one. A requirement to be excused for like work sessions or committees. I've been saying that when members ask me to say that. We'll sometimes specifically ask, like, would you let people know it's excused? And when I know someone's traveling or at a conference, I'll mention that, because I know we all try really hard to make it to meetings, and oftentimes just want people to know that, yeah, we've got a conference or work or something, and that's why we're not there. I don't think it really makes any difference in terms of attendance. And again, if I know someone's gone and I know they're comfortable with me stating why, I'll state it. But sometimes, I don't know if someone's calling in late and will be joining. And that's why in some cases I don't mention it because I don't know.
Right.
And sometimes people ask, hey, can you let everybody know I'll be late?
Yeah. I mean, I think from my perspective, the challenge is that what happens is that, you know, if, for instance, if I know I'm not going to attend a meeting because I have another meeting or whatever, I have not been contacting you and letting you know. And so at those meetings, there is, you know, so-and-so's excused, and then I'm not excused, right? And so I'm not sure this matters at all, but it does, I've heard it more and more, and it sounds a little odd because it'll say, you know, Austin Quinn Davidson, and then excused, and Forrest Dunbar, nothing. And then it'll go to next person, right? And so it's like, okay, so Austin was excused, but Forrest is not there and he's not excused. So anyway, it just creates a little bit of I think, of a strange dynamic within the meetings. And I think whatever process we use should just be the same, so that if for instance, if the general practice is, if you know you're not going to attend 3 meetings next week, to just send you those 3 meetings so you know, and then you just have a practice of excusing folks or not. So anyway, I just wanted to bring it up. I don't think it's that big of a deal, and it doesn't really make much of a difference, except when there's a pattern of some people being excused and some people not, and people wondering why. So.
Sure, no, that's a great point. It's no skin off my nose either way, however the body wants to handle it, because I have been mentioning that when people have been asking, and oftentimes too, when people aren't there for roll call, they join and we note for the record they're there. So I would like to hear feedback from members on that. I know we've got Jamie and Meg, but I just want to ask, Felix, did you want to speak to this point or respond to?
Yeah, that's why I was in the queue.
Okay, yeah, that's what I figured.
Thanks. So yeah, thanks, Cameron, for bringing that up. I will say, just like Suzanne said, there's nothing in the code that requires people to say they're excused or even to attend work sessions. The only code-specific issues regarding regular assembly meetings. But I know that it was my practice. I know Eric Croft did it when he was chair, and so did Forrest when he has been chair. And it's really sort of an informal practice. When you know you're not going to be able to go, you typically text or email the chair and, hey, I won't be able to go. And the chair keeps a track and they say, okay, this person is excused. And I think you're right that it sort of creates this oddity of, all right, well, this person, they're not here and they're not excused. What's going on with them? And I think the main reason that folks want to make sure it's on the record that they're excused, I think it's mainly a perception issue, if I'm being totally honest. We want people to understand that I could have been here but can't be there, so please mark me as excused. And I think it's helpful for the public who, there's a surprising amount of members of the public who follow these things and who's at what and who's not at what. And, it's helpful for the public to understand why folks aren't there. So it's always been informal as I have understood it and seen the practice. I don't know if it's useful to formalize it. I feel like that would be a lot of work, but what I would say if I were to give any advice is just, make it a pattern of just letting the chair know, or the committee chair or whatever it is, know that you're not going to be able to attend, so that it's sort of, you make sure it's on the record.
Thanks, Felix. Cameron, did you want to add anything else before we?
No, I think it's really helpful. Honestly, I hadn't even noticed it. And so for me, it's a very easy practice to just notify the chair of whatever meetings I'm not going to be able to attend that week. So thanks.
Thanks, Cameron. Should I go ahead and set up a few work sessions so we can maybe like on Monday or Tuesday?
Perfect. Sounds good.
4 hour sessions.
Okay, so we'll go next to Jamie and then Meg.
Thanks, Suzanne. To hit on a couple of points with what Austin brought up, I agree. I'm in school full time and I have a lot of busy things and I don't want to miss out on anything as far as the meetings. And I recall that the Friday afternoons were the ones that we kept open. I didn't know it was only subject to summer. But if there's some way we can consolidate or like Austin was saying, sort of facilitate what's really important, which all are, but you know what I mean, prioritize because it's heavy. It absolutely is heavy. And I believe that our position as assembly persons were to be more of a part-time, but not in a bad way because, you know, when we're done with all our work sessions, we have other commitments, like we have community meetings, chamber of commerce meetings, we have community council. And I know you're probably all shaking your heads or nodding them. Yes, we do. So it does get a little bit of heavy. And so I just wanted to be supportive of what Austin had brought up. The other thing is what Cameron had brought up in regards to excused or not excused. I agree with Cameron. I think when someone is excused from, let's just say school, it's checked like, okay, you're good. And when you're unexcused, it's kind of a tally against you. And I would try to figure out how we could address that because I know Mr. Constant a long time ago when I first came on board, I said, oh God, I can't make this. I have a conflict. He's like, you work for your community. Like your schedule's up to your schedule. And I think he was saying that too, because it's not like in code or something. And sometimes like at the last minute, things tweak. Like today, I was like, oh man, I got to take the kid to the orthodontist. So things kind of get a little bit crazy. So the whole unexcused excuse, I don't know. I don't know if I like that. I try as much as I can, Suzanne, to let you know, or who's ever chairing a committee. But yeah, I'm both supportive of Cameron and Austin's, questions or concerns. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. Meg?
Thank you. I would really appreciate some block scheduling, maybe not knowing which work sessions, but blocks. I feel like I'm having to choose between two very important things a lot of times, especially if things come up last minute. And with all of the special meetings we've had in the evenings, the assembly meetings, that's meaning missing out on some community council meetings. And, then there's sometimes a request to catch up otherwise, and it's just getting really hard to schedule. So if we can look, as we look into the new year, really just setting aside the time as much as we set aside time for our regular meetings, that predictability would be really helpful in trying to schedule, whether it's other work commitments with our constituents or, family time, frankly. So I would appreciate that. Thanks.
Thanks, Meg. And just a quick follow-up. When you say block scheduling, would you like to see like Fridays blocked out on your schedule just to like hold those times in case there are work sessions or just as they're scheduled? And I'm just curious.
Yeah, so some kind of predictability as when, the time that you would be filling up on our calendars for us. So if that's prioritizing starting Friday morning, working through, to a certain time, so then I just don't schedule anything else. I think that would be really helpful. And then I understand sometimes we'll go beyond that and maybe there's that first potential backup time. I would also like to flag the policy committee for AMATs to make sure it's on your calendar for scheduling because things seem to get scheduled over that and the technical advisory council for AMATs. And those are things that AMATs policy committee members often attend and they're important, but they're only on like 2 or 3 of our schedules. Thanks.
Thanks, Meg. And the only reason I was asking about the block schedule is, if we don't need those times, then it may be that your Friday afternoon is free. I would hate to disappoint anybody with a cancellation of a work session, but that could happen.
I will take that disappointment and thank you for it. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thanks, Meg. Oh, Austin, did you have a comment? I'm just looking down here.
Yeah, I was just, I think, piggybacking on Meg and agreeing with her that just having, maybe revisiting this, these are the days and times we shoot for first. And I don't know that Meg needed her calendar necessarily blocked out, but just an understanding of what personally to keep blocked out.
Yeah, and it may be helpful too, like Barbara had mentioned, those alternate Tuesdays will be reserved at the chambers. I mean, we can just have those kind of as a placeholder in everybody's calendars too. I mean, sometimes it's helpful to know if it's needed, it's already there, because we do juggle work and school and family and community councils. So I can appreciate how it's really important to have an up-to-date calendar. Thanks everybody for that great feedback. We can go ahead then, I think, and move on to Assembly member discussion on pending business. We've got about an hour left, and we want to make sure we have time to talk about those other two bullet points on the facilitated collaborative process and an update from the reapportionment committee. But we can go ahead and start by going around the table, the horn. I'll just go through the participant list. Forrest, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, I'll just say that I don't have any particular ordinances coming down the pike. We obviously been very busy with budget stuff and just trying to close out her budget season.
Hey, thanks, Forrest. Crystal?
Thanks, Suzanne. I have a reallocation amendment that I will have to do to the ARP funds. And it's really just trying to get a different distribution organization for the 50,000 that we were trying to give voucher cards to the community. And it's just turned out that the Love Inc. and the Eagle River Food Pantry just can't quite handle all the documentation requirements and things like that. Not to mention that they're not, they don't have real long hours that they're open and available for the public to come in. So we're going to try to switch that to the Chamber of Commerce. So anyway, hoping to have that on the agenda for the 21st meeting, but we'll see. Trying to get the money out to the community as soon as we can, and I think right after the holidays would be a good thing. But anyway, that's about the only thing that I can think of right now that that's in the works for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Crystal. And I guess we'll do a second round of this when we do committee updates, or people can speak to committee updates now. Cameron?
Yeah, just a few things. Well, one just issue I want to just throw out, because I know others are struggling with it, and we don't need to discuss it, but I just want to put it out there that you know, I have had several really challenging situations recently related to the appointed chief equity officer, the new person, junior, and just the challenge of managing, you know, respecting him as a person and the community that is supportive of him being put in that position, with the challenge related to what we're trying to wrestle with the administration. And I would just say that it's really disappointing and challenging. And I had another example like that last night. And so anyway, I just want to put that out there, that I think others may be struggling with that as well. But it's certainly uncomfortable and challenging to both recognize him and recognize the you know, the community that is supporting him, and also just the challenges around it with the decisions that we're trying to make around that. So so a couple of things. Still working on body camera policy stuff. So at this point, it looks like In the new year, I'll be working with Kendra, Chair of the Public Safety Commission, and working with APD and the Department of Law and others to try to pull together a meeting that will allow us to review the public comment related to the policy and to create an opportunity for the Assembly and for the Commission to come together, and the public as well, and to have some opportunity to discuss it with a hope that we can provide some final recommendations to the administration as they begin to finalize that policy. And so any feedback that you all have on that, would love, but at this point, that's the plan. The plan is to try to plan and schedule and design a really thoughtful meeting that will create an opportunity for us to have a thoughtful discussion about where the policy is, why it is where it is, and then make some recommendations moving forward. So that's on my plate. And then the only other thing I just wanted to make people aware of is there's this amazing advisory group called the Vaccine Advisory Committee, I believe, and they have been working for almost a year, about a little over a year, with the health department. And it's just this really powerhouse group of community leaders that have done amazing work. And that committee ended as of yesterday. That was the last meeting. And so I'm working with them to identify how we can keep those community members engaged and keep that work moving forward. And so more to come on that. That's it.
Thank you, Cameron. Pete?
Well, thanks, Suzanne. And it's unfortunate that we were unable to get to the public hearing on the updates to Title 28 at our meeting Tuesday. And so that's postponed to the 14th. And of course, that's going to be continued to the 21st. And that's been, the priority of the Ethics and Election Committee for the last several months. We've been working on that. And so we're hoping that those public hearings go off as scheduled so that we can actually get a chance to vote on those changes, on the meeting on the 21st. And that's kind of what I have right now. Later today, actually, there's an opioid call that AML is having that I'm planning to dial into here around 2:30. So if I have to leave a little early, that's where I'll be. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Austin?
I don't have much to share. I think been doing a lot of work on the budget, as Forrest mentioned, and Cameron and I have a few constituent issues going on, airport stuff, homeless camps, that sort of thing that I've been focusing on. Also just meeting with community council presidents. We have a new president turn again. So met with her yesterday, started to get maybe a system for how Cameron and I can talk with the leadership at all of our community councils and make sure we're hearing from them regularly. So been focusing on that sort of thing. Thanks.
Thanks, Austin. Felix?
Thanks, Suzanne. So a few things. First is regarding the infrastructure bill and the soon-to-be-passed Build Back Better bill. I have begun coordinating with some community partners on some of the housing and social services work. And I'm very curious, and I know that there is, besides the Housing and Homelessness Committee, I know that the Community and Economic Development Committee, as well as the Enterprise and Utilities Committee, are really interested in that kind of work. And so I'm wondering if there's some way of for us to coordinate among all these various committees on the work that we're doing. I don't know if it's this venue, but I think that would be, as more of those dollars start to come to Alaska and to Anchorage, I think that would be particularly helpful. Oh, and AMATS, can't forget AMATS. So, that's, I think, going to be important work that a lot of different folks are going to have their fingerprints on in various different areas. Second is on the Midtown Partnership. So Meg and I had an initial meeting earlier this week with the ACDA, about the Midtown Partnership and getting that rolling, and if that's what we call it, quote unquote Midtown Partnership. And so excited to do that work. Then third is, just based on feedback that we got at the joint meeting yesterday with the Native Village of Eklutna, and also feedback that I received on Sunday at the Alaska Black Caucus event regarding the change in leadership at the police department. I think I'm going to take a little bit more of an active role in terms of helping the police department, and particularly the leadership structure in the police department, have good community relations with some specific communities in Anchorage, and that's something that I did with Chief Dahl, and just based on some of the things that I've heard, feedback that I've heard, I think there's a lot of interest in having that positive relationship with APD. So that's something that I'm going to be working on. And then last, a specific policy, probably an ordinance that you'll see in January sometime. There's been every year, community partners always complain about sort of the lack of preparation for a coordinated winter plan with regards to homelessness. And it always feels like we're behind the 8 ball every year. And so I got a suggestion from a community of the possibility of putting it in code of let's go ahead and just codify having a winter plan so that we know this is something that we need to do every year, and let's bring it before the assembly every year. Not necessarily for approval. I don't know if that's something we want to do, but at least for review at a committee or something like that, just so that we can get ahead of the curve instead of be behind the curve. So that's something that I am working on as chair of that committee. Thanks.
Thanks, Felix. John?
Oh, let's see, what do we got? I kind of got my brainstorm list, so it's all, some of it is very much aspirational. Felix mentioned the infrastructure bill, and that's something I've been poking around with too, and certainly looking at how AMATS is done, and then a lot of it is grant-based, and I'm worried that we don't have grant writers at the municipality and kind of planning ahead on that. Felix mentioned maybe looking at a committee to put that under, and I think housing and homeless is pretty busy already, and CEDC is a little quiet recently, so that might be a better place to park it. And I think Felix should remember that, so that would be really helpful. It sounds like you're going a little bit different. I was looking at housing so much, I was looking, at least initially, because the AMAT's more at the transportation and so on. We continue to look at assessors' routines, particularly land valuation, and trying to get that data available. And I think we'll make some progress, but it depends on the new computer program that they have. And then unasserted rights of way and easements is still on my list, so I've made no progress on it. We've got Title 21 things coming our way fairly soon, and we'll get an update on that at the CEDC next week. And then Title 23, the building code, they're working their way through the building board and planning and zoning commission and so on. And then continuing to work with ACLT and their fees and rules for markets and cottage foods that I think most of us had heard something about. And health department spread so thin dealing with homeless issues and such that that's probably going to be a slow burn, but kind of shoot for having stuff lined up in time for next summer. At AMATS, the tip scoring is working through the various groups, and hopefully be to us before March, April, though that's uncertain. If it goes out to the public, it could be it would be a long time before we see it. And also the new MTP is coming around. And then we had a document months ago about making our own long-range transportation plan instead of pretending that the MTP is our LRTP. There's your acronyms for AMATS. And I think Meg and I were getting a little, with the time of Dorothy leaving, that might not be quite on the path we want, so we're going to have to watch that. we talked yesterday with the Native Village of Cluden. I did send an email to Ben Bowman and Jack Adamus about the history of property taxes and their various buildings and so on, following up on that. And then, we had, it's an ongoing issue. It's like safe crossing over the off crossing Muldoon, where that boy got killed with his bicycle. Crossing over to Service High when they rebuilt Abbott, nothing done to help pedestrians. And now we have the second phase of O'Malley Road, and pathways on both sides, and no way to cross for kids to get over to O'Malley Elementary. This is something I've been beating on my head on for literally 20 years since I was chair of the community council there. There's a new group that's very enlivened about that, getting people across O'Malley Road, and I am rooting for them 100% and doing all I can to help them, because at some point we really have to get serious about not just moving cars faster, but saying help people on a walk. So anyway, those are some of the main things that popped into mind during the meeting. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Meg?
Suzanne, may I ask John a question?
Sure, go ahead, Austin.
Thanks. John, God, it must have been a year or two ago now. Well, it was when Becky was here, Becky Pearson. So we started talking about it then. I think you and I, and Crystal probably too, I'm trying to remember now, we're all interested in exploring having some sort of commission that dealt with, I think, both liquor and marijuana licenses, but perhaps it was only one. I'm kind of forgetting all the details. But I think that followed, kind of fell to the side because we've just been so busy. Have you been working on that? Do either of you have any update? Is that still happening? I haven't been part of CEDC recently, so maybe it is progressing.
But that we kind of decided we didn't need. And when we, the first couple of years on the assembly, it was just a blitz of marijuana licenses. And we were meeting every week, and we looked at a handful of them, and they took a long time for each one because they were relatively new to us. But at this point, we get one every couple months. And they've all got it figured out. We've learned how to read the documents quickly. We look at them at the CDC instead of 30 to 45 minutes, they're 15 minutes to review. So instead of being a real big burden, it's just like a small piece of what we're doing. And then the liquor licenses are rarely an issue, really. I mean, and when it is, it's usually whoever's district it's in, they pick it up, with their constituents.
Right. Yeah, okay, that makes sense to me. Thanks.
Thanks, Austin. Actually, Crystal wants to comment on that too.
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, Austin, I think you bring up a good question, not only with the marijuana licenses, and of course, John answered that very well, and I think it works. But I think we have kind of a void, if you will, or a gap in regards to what we do with alcohol licenses. And, I know I've asked the question a couple of times about why the co-chairs of the Public Safety Committee are considered sponsors of alcohol licenses when we actually don't even see them unless somebody brings up a question and then we decide, well, hey, we'll have a meeting to discuss the problems with this particular license or whatever. So there is a disconnect, I guess I would say, in terms of the alcohol licensing. And so I don't think we've actually reconciled that properly yet, at least not in my mind. So there might be the ability to have, some smaller conversations about that. So anyway, I think Austin's right. There's still kind of a question out there as far as I'm concerned, at least with alcohol licenses. So thanks, Austin. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thanks. Go ahead, John. John, were you going to comment?
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, there is a difference with the alcohol licenses, though, and partly we don't have one. And so we're really just kind of advisory to the, AMCO, but, we've obviously been able to be very influential in them as well. So.
Thanks, John. And thanks, Crystal, to your point about the public safety co-chairs being listed on those documents. It was my understanding that we are on a path to change that. And Barbara, I don't know if you can speak to that or we just need to get an update from Mandy. We can come back to this one.
I am trying to unmute. Madam Chair, at your direction, we can change that immediately. And I think we understand the issue that the Public Safety Committee is doing such different things than it did. You know, this practice was implemented long before I was here. And I would just recommend that we make the chair and the co-chair the sponsors of those items. And if you give me that direction now, it will be done.
Great. Yes, I know we had discussed this, and thank you for that, Barbara. Let's go ahead and do it. Thank you, and thank you, Crystal, for bringing that up, because I know we had talked about it before.
Well, thanks. Yeah, sounds like it's fixed then. So good. Thanks.
Thank you. Meg?
Thanks. I apologize. I had multitasked a couple of meetings, so I wasn't able to tune in both ears to the updates by members, but I'll go back and listen to catch up. I don't have any significant pending business updates at this moment. Most of my time is devoted other places other than just getting some follow-up on projects that kind of got passed or moved forward, and now they're in implementation phases, whether that's exploring the Midtown Tax Improvement District, and then just really in more of a follow-up phase on projects that got through. So, and then I will touch base with John about if you guys discussed better communication out of the collaborative process, and make sure I get caught up with him. Thanks.
Thanks, Meg. Okay, so I'll just ask if anybody has any updates from committees concerning upcoming business that they want to speak to.
Whatever Jessica wants to say, moving forward.
You can just speak up or put yourself in the queue, whichever. Any updates from committees?
Committee questions. Somebody posed the.
Okay. And if folks could please mute, we'll go ahead and move on to the update on facilitated collaborative process between the administration and legislative drafting group. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Chris had asked that we add a structured discussion of communication methodology for this group. And so I don't know if we want to go first to John or Meg. I know you're not on that anymore, but you obviously have a lot of knowledge and experience. So if either of you want to provide any additional updates, kick us off.
You know, I can start a little bit, and one thing that I want to really highlight, kind of pat Meg on the back once again, is, you know, when we had the allocations of the rental money and then the other $3.5 million to Anchorage or to Alaska Housing Finance Corp, that she was so alert to catch that, hey, that was the money we've been talking about needing for this proposal that we put forward, and then she got that and got wording in there to, you know, make sure it got properly directed. And then she met yesterday with HFC while we were at the Native Village Included thing. So I missed that and look forward to getting an update from her. But that was really an excellent catch. And you know, I think the rest of us, maybe Chris would have caught it, but totally went by me. But I think we have a pretty good update from our Tuesday meeting. You know, I mean, you know the state of the art essentially, unless you had some more questions. How we would communicate, we talked about a bit at our meeting yesterday. And, you know, we've been at the end of every meeting saying, okay, what are our talking points, you know, that we would release to the world from that. And those should have been going out to you. They tend to be fairly lean though. But, you know, everyone, if you look at them over if you save them, you know, the story unfolds. But I think we all did agree yesterday that it was a lot dropped on everybody at the last minute. It's very significant. And, you know, as we go forward, we definitely want to have more information sooner. And we were kind of talking like 2 weeks, but that is not always possible because some of the stuff happens fast. You know, we lost a chance at the Alaska Club, which the philanthropy was looking at buying. Someone else bought it. You know, so when the other buildings became or are available, they want to move really quickly and be poised for that. So, you know, that's one of the challenges to really get these things going. You have to act fast, but a lot of that is, I think most of the bulk of that stuff, if these buildings do come through, that we, you know, provided some funding for on Tuesday, that we'll have more time for future things. I know Meg, if she's with us.
Sorry, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was having an issue unmuting. That's the first time I've had it pop up, so I guess I've been lucky till now. Yeah, I'm comfortable figuring out how we can get information out. I want to really hear what's going to be most valuable to members. Structurally, and again, I apologize if John just said it. It was acknowledged when we met that we need to do better, and to possibly, hate to say ask for a work session when we just talked about how jammed up our schedules are, but maybe we will be asking in advance to be in the work session queue if we know we're a couple weeks out from introducing, that members might be out from introducing an item, and then that way additional feedback could be woven into whatever might be introduced. But I would really like to hear what's most useful to members. That fact sheet that Mr. Weddleton turned into an AIM is something I originally drafted. I didn't know it was going to become your assembly information memorandum. And I will admit, it was very hard to condense all of our work into 2 pages. So again, whatever would be most useful, I'm game for. Thanks.
Thanks, Meg. We'll go to Austin next.
Thanks, Suzanne, and thanks to John and Meg, and especially Meg for making that handout, because it was literally all we had that we could learn from. So I've received several emails from constituents saying, what? The Barrett Inn was just purchased? You never even told us about this. We never even heard about this. Why would you not be transparent with us? So anyway, just to sort of express, I mean, I can't imagine, Mr. Constant, like if something were put downtown with him finding out 3 days beforehand, I just can't imagine what would ensue. So just to give a little perspective, it's really helpful, you know, and I really feel for the folks in East Anchorage, right? That was sort of dropped on them. And I felt pretty dissatisfied with the process at the assembly meeting, because we were basically told, you can't really change this. If you want it to be successful, you can't really make any changes. And it puts us in a very difficult and I think inappropriate position to say, you represent your district and people in this city, but we are telling you right now, you heard about this last minute and you should vote yes, or else you're the bad guy. And I just felt really uncomfortable with that. And I don't know that I would support something like that again. So I just want to get that out there. In terms of actual ideas, I think that the things that that Meg shared, that is great. Stuff that we could take to community councils, that's great. Documents that are easy to hand out or to forward to people. I've now forwarded that thing you sent around, John, that Meg made, I mean, to half a dozen people in the last day because they've asked questions about it. So those sorts of things are really helpful. My impression is that you all are meeting frequently, but the rest of us don't know what's going on in those meetings. So at minimum, one of you needs to commit, please, to sending an email to Barbara that can be circulated to all the members, talking about what you discussed and where you're headed. And I think that's the absolute minimum. I mean, we shouldn't be surprised that we're buying 3 facilities and here a few days in advance. I mean, having been in the mayor role, we never dropped that on the assembly like that. It wouldn't have worked. You guys wouldn't have supported it. So please, regular email report outs of what's in the mix. I know things happen quickly, but they don't happen, you know, within a couple days. There's obviously something leading up to that. We can keep those things confidential. If there are confidentiality issues, just let us know. But we have to be kept in the loop because it impacts our communities. So fact sheets, a report out after every meeting. We used to get the facilitator notes. I don't think I've received any of those for at least a month. I don't know the exact timeline, but I don't, certainly not anytime recently. So I think that has stopped and didn't seem super helpful. They were pretty bare bones to begin with. I spoke with Michelle Brown and Bob Dole about maybe helping play a communications role, since I've been asking for this repeatedly and it's not happening. So perhaps collaborating with them to see how they could better communicate with other members, because I know you are limited by the Open Meetings Act. Those are some ideas I have. You could also send out like a weekly update. Here's where we are. You know, nothing happened this week. Oh, this week we met and we narrowed down from 8 possibilities to 4. Here's where they are. That sort of thing. So those are my ideas for now, and I'll let you know if I think. Oh, one other idea is we could have a. I think it's potentially difficult for the public to have a housing and homelessness work committee where we don't talk about this. So it seems to be some of the most important housing and homelessness work that's happening, but we're not reporting it in the public venue where people might expect that to be. So I would also like us to consider having 5 to 10 minute whatever update on where we are with the facilitated process, what's happening, what's coming, etc. Those are my ideas for now.
Thanks, Austin. Cameron?
Yeah, just second lots of things that Austin said. And also, the only reason that I felt any ability to walk into that meeting with any sense of what was going on was because of a conversation with Michelle Brown. I mean, even though I had even the document, it's still, you need more, sort of color and layering to what, why, and how. And so I think some of the ideas that Austin shared are good. I think that I guess I'm curious as to those meetings, how closed they are. If a like if Claire attended that meeting but didn't speak, but just was there, or if I'm just curious of how we could have better access to what's going on and a better heads up without hurting the process. And yeah, I just want to second that I was that the meeting was very difficult, and it felt very much like, well, it wasn't very much like it was, that if the 2.8 doesn't go, all cards are off the table. And so I think it's just really important that we're all honest about that was how it was presented to us, and that's just not a really effective way for us to be working with the administration. So thank you.
Thanks, Cameron. Meg? Meg?
Sorry, now I'm cursed with the mute button. I apologize. So I just wanted to say I'm hearing the feedback very clearly, and I want to express that to the extent that anyone had feelings like they were stuck and not being able to stray from the facilitated agreement as presented on Tuesday night, that's definitely was not the intent, and that is reiterated in the facilitation over and over again, that there are only a very small number of assembly members in there. So I just want my apologies if members felt that way. It definitely shouldn't have felt like that. So again, my apologies. And we really want to make sure that never ever happens again. So I just want to acknowledge that I'm hearing that feedback, give my apology, and we'll work on that. And I really appreciated all of the direct ideas that came out. And I think all of those things are probably doable, except making any commitments about the committee meeting, because that will be up to Felix. Thanks.
Thanks, Meg. I do want to note that members were polled to see if they wanted a work session on it. It was not a whole lot of time before the meeting, but there wasn't interest in having a work session for that. We'll go to John.
Oh, yeah, you know, Cameron had mentioned having Claire in there. We did broach that, and having Claire in there means having Corey from the mayor's office in there as well, probably. And then you start getting into a media event, and it made me uncomfortable. We've had a really good relationship where we talk openly, and you know, we have the complete unabashed ability to say stupid things and not get beat up over it. And I think that helps with problem solving ultimately. So that wasn't quite where we landed. We have, I think we'll redouble our efforts to get those talking points out. And then it is a good idea to have it, you know, standing item on the Housing and Homeless Committee.
Thanks, John. Austin, you have a comment in the chat. Do you want to state your comment?
Sure. Sorry for using the chat for substantive stuff. I was just reacting to Meg's comment that, you know, she was sorry that members felt that it was sort of this package or nothing. But, you know, if I recall the other two members, like John can correct me if I'm wrong, but certainly Chris said, you know, don't stray from this. If you do, it's not going to work. And so that's just a very, and, you know, yeah, it's just a very difficult position to be put in that, you know, you knew basically nothing about what this money was going to be spent on. We're dropping it on you on Friday in a handout. You know, there was offered a work session. I wasn't available Monday because it's so last minute. So that's why I didn't ask for it. And you better vote on it as presented on Tuesday without hearing a lot about it. So anyway.
Thanks, Austin. Forrest?
No, I mean, well, I'll just say what I said in the chat. And I don't remember the exact timing of the work session request, but I felt like it happened before I knew what that $6 million was for. I mean, so the original ordinance was introduced and it was like $6 million basically shifted towards this process, towards this fund, which I felt fine. You know, let's set aside this money for this process. And then I thought the timing was such as, well, do you want to have a work session about that? And I said no. But then, again, I thought it was subsequent to that. We discovered exactly what it was going for with the handout, and then of course the S version, which was wasn't available until that night, and so that was why I declined the work session. So, but I mean, I don't have any, you know, I'm not upset with the members that have been working so hard on this. I just think it's a bad practice for all the reasons have already been discussed. So I'm just glad that we're going to change things moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Forrest, and appreciate the point about when there's an S version, people might feel like, okay, there's no need for the original version to have a work session. So thanks for raising that point. Claire is in the queue. Actually, I'll just go to Meg quickly here because she wants to comment on Meg's comment, and then we'll come back to you, Claire. Meg?
Thanks. I just wanted to provide a little context on getting a late S version on that one. That was legal calling on Monday saying there had to be an S version. So sometimes those things, as you know, are a little bit out of our control, and I apologize that that was the way it was. But I definitely, when Ms. Ennis gives you legal advice on how appropriation needs to be structured, I generally take it. So that's what was what prompted the S version.
So I'll go back through the queue, actually Felix and then Claire, or Forrest, did you want to comment on Meg's comment before we move on?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, the S version actually was illuminating, I mean, versus the original version. And I don't know what the timing was on that stuff, but had the original version been the S version, where it said, here are the 3 projects that $6 million is going to be used for, I absolutely would have asked for a work session. So, you know, a lot of the problem was with the original version being so vague, it was impossible to know that we already had these 3 specific sites lined out. And perhaps when that ordinance was introduced, the working group didn't know that those were going to be the 3 projects. But if they did, I think that's more the critique is the S version should have been the original version. But anyway.
Thanks, Forrest. Austin said in the chat she agrees with Forrest, and we'll go to Felix and then Claire. Felix?
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. I guess riffing off of what Forrest just said, yeah, I agree with Forrest's, going back to comments we made earlier about not having needless work sessions. When I saw the work session request, I thought, why? Why would we need a work session request to talk about moving $6 million from one pot to another pot? That didn't make sense to me. So I was very surprised to see the S version and then the AIM come out and see, oh, that's maybe why we should have had a work session. But none of that was really described to the body, so it was hard for us to make that judgment call. In regards to having this as a regular update at the Committee on Housing and Homelessness, I will say, as I understand it, prior leadership decided not to have this in the committee. I don't mind having this in the committee. I will say, I don't think it's enough to have it at the committee. I think there needs to be a lot more outreach work than just having this as a regular monthly part. Also, there might be times when the real substantive updates happens the day after the committee, and so the committee timing might not work well. So I don't want us to rely too much on that committee as a outreach point. I understand why perhaps Claire and Corey might not be able to attend the actual facilitated process and the meetings going on. But, I'm curious on whether Claire and Corey might be able to assist with the public outreach because, we know that we can do press releases fairly well. I mean, we've gotten into that rhythm. We've gotten into a rhythm of organizing town halls fairly quickly. The more different types of outreach that we can do to touch as many people as possible, as quickly as possible when important fulcrums are being reached in the decision-making process, I think the better. And to any extent that Corey and Claire can assist with that, I think that would be great.
Thanks, Felix. Claire?
Yeah, Felix, thanks for that lead. That's exactly what I wanted to say. Obviously, you as assembly members need the communication, but I think the community also needs more communication. There was a really big to-do back in September when you had your meeting announcing the plan. And then I don't think the community heard anything until the ADN article yesterday, which was kind of a sensational headline of spending money on homeless shelter, whatever it was. So I think it'd be a good opportunity for me and Corey to work together to make sure that we're highlighting this partnership and to make sure it's evenly represented. Both sides can tell the success story. So yeah, I would just make the case. I'd love to learn more because it was one of the hottest topics of the week and I didn't have it up on the front of the website. When I start an e-newsletter, I could include it in there. But I just don't know anything about what's going on with the process. And so I'd love to be looped in more and working with Corey on the public outreach side of it.
Thanks, Claire. Does anyone else want in the queue on this topic?
John could close it out maybe.
Go ahead, John.
Another thing to consider too is at some point we don't need this facilitated group and we can start doing things the normal way. I don't anticipate this is forever. I mean, early setting the path forward was critical, probably recently, but at some point when we've pretty much said, okay, these are the 5 pieces, we know where we're going, there will be ongoing expenses to allocate and this and that, but I don't know that we need that particular group. I think we're waning in our importance.
Thanks, John. Okay, I don't see anyone else in the queue for this. Just as follow-up, I will.
Suzanne, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, Cameron?
Sorry, yeah, I wasn't able to get in. I guess I would just wanted to say that, yeah, I would be cautious before we end this group. I think one thing that at least I'm learning about navigating this new relationship with the new administration is that it feels more productive when we do things in this smaller group setting, because it's less about, sort of back and forth on, scoring points or rhetoric or whatever, but it gets to really substantive kind of work. And so I just feel like that this facilitated process has been successful, with the exception of some of the communication, and that we may even want to consider more of these sort of facilitated groups to work on the big issues that we need to work on over the next year or two. I think that it may be a smart way for us to get really important work done with this administration that is not, that comes out to the public and comes out to us when it's, when some foundational work has been done, so that it doesn't get destroyed early, but has the opportunity to build. And so anyway, I want to again thank the group for their work, and I think, yes, at some point it does just need to come out of that group. But I also would like to sort of put on the record that there are other issues like the homelessness issue and the mass care exit and these kinds of things that we need to be able to work with them on. And this may be a methodology that we use for other issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Cameron. I want to note from Meg, who had to drop, that the facilitation schedule for the remainder of the year is to meet next Wednesday, the 15th, and then not again until January 12th. And I wanted to echo Cameron's thanks to John and Meg and Chris for their work on that, and agree that this is a promising framework for tackling some of these complex and very important issues. So we have 9 minutes left, and I was hoping to get an update from the reapportionment committee, and then leave a couple minutes for audience participation. So I may ask for a motion to extend if there are folks who are here to participate. Is there someone from the reapportionment committee who would like to?
I can do it, Suzanne.
Thanks, Austin.
Yeah, sure. Sorry to cut you off there. So Chris was gone for part of the meeting today. He actually ended up being able to hop on, but so I chaired it and made a little note of things, but would love Pete or Crystal or others who were there. I think both Jamie and Forrest joined today as well, to hop in at any point. As you know, and also Claire, as you know, Claire's been helping staff that committee along with Mandy, and she put together a really great fact sheet that she's distributed. So feel free to use that to share with constituents or community councils or otherwise. The fact sheet, either it's on the fact sheet or separate document, there's a timeline. We went through that timeline today. We have one other meeting where we will discuss sort of draft maps that Dennis Wheeler and his shop puts together for us. At this point, no one's really given, I mean, I think Dennis asked for some feedback, but I think it's been pretty minimal from members. We've really just said, go for it. Dennis and his shop put together, I think, 4 maps, 3 of which were ready today. They were finalizing the 4th and just showed them to us really briefly today. We didn't really have any substantive discussion of whether those look good or bad or what we should do, but the plan was, I asked him to put those in a format that was really accessible to all members, and so that all members could start looking at those maps and giving feedback. So he is doing that, and we'll circulate it either through Barbara or Claire, or just him sending it to all members so that you're all involved in the process. I think we meet next January 6th. I could look on my calendar, but Claire can correct me if I'm wrong too, to go over those maps, just talk through them and start giving real feedback. And then we'll have the town halls the next week to get public feedback. January 10th, I think, is the deadline for external, third party, public, whoever to submit ideas of maps on their own. So we'll do some work over the next month to get, all of assembly member feedback, take in some public feedback, and then go from there. And regarding the town halls, we had a good discussion today about those, decided to hold 2, which were already on the timeline, but confirmed that made sense. 1 at the library in person for those who want to attend that sort of thing in person. Crystal made the good point that, it's just a lot easier to see these maps in person. You can blow them up and have reprographics, put things on easels and show areas where people could see what district they would be in, et cetera. And then we also want to have one town hall that's for digital via Teams for folks who, maybe aren't comfortable coming in person or are, calling in from Girdwood and don't want to have to drive to the library or whatever. So those 2 formal town halls, which are the week of January 10th, they're on the 12th and 13th. And Claire and Dennis will be working on a press release to issue soon, highlighting those town halls and highlighting the timeline and hopefully directing folks to the initial drafts of the maps that we have. And I think that's probably it. Do you want to add anything, Claire, or any other members who were there this morning?
Yeah, I'd just like to add that we talked about, we really only have capacity to do 2 big town halls, but that leaves Girdwood and Eagle River and people with different schedules out of it. And so we had the idea, I think Jamie and Crystal and Christopher came up with the idea that each of you members could do your own little mini town halls. We're going to print the maps on big boards, and I'll have fact sheets and kind of an outreach kit that you can use. I'm going to talk to the library and see if we could post them, have them standing up in the library lobbies at the different branches in the meantime. And so if you have meetings coming up in early January with constituents or want to make a special trip to Girdwood or some area in your district, we'll have the resources for that.
Thanks, Claire. Is there anyone else who wants to comment? Thank you, Austin, for the update. So it's 2:56. We don't have anything under unfinished business, and I'm just going to skip other items given the time. Are there any members of the public here who would like to participate? I am scanning the list. *6 to unmute, but I don't see anyone. Are there any members of the public who are dialed in who would like to participate? Please press *6 to unmute. I'm just pausing in case other folks are having difficulty in muting. I don't see anybody. Were there any final comments from assembly members? Okay, I don't see anyone in the queue and I don't hear anybody. So thank you all for your work and for being here today. And thank you, Barbara and Claire and the rest of the clerk's office team for all the work you do. And I believe, Felix, there's an audit committee meeting at 3:10. And then otherwise, we'll see most of you hopefully tomorrow at the meeting with the school board. So have a great evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.